I found the first mention of the hollow in redacted urban planning records from the late 90s. It was labeled as a rendering inconsistency. My friend, who spends too much time on Anomaly forums, told me where to find it, a part of the forest where the maps just stop. When I finally reached the coordinates, the first thing I noticed wasn't the hole itself, but the silence. It wasn't the peaceful quiet you expect in nature. It was a vacuum. I could see the wind moving the pine trees a few yards away, but I couldn't hear the rustle of the needles. I couldn't hear the birds. I couldn't even hear the sound of my own boots hitting the dry earth. The air felt heavy, like the pressure change you feel right before a massive storm, and it smelled of ancient, stagnant air, metallic and bone-cold, rising from the depths like the breath of a machine that hasn't been turned on in centuries. The hole was a perfect circle, about 10 feet across, cut into the ground with a precision that felt wrong. No erosion, no jagged edges. Just a sharp, mathematical void. There's a rule written in those old records. If you can no longer hear your own heartbeat, you've already crossed the event horizon. I stood there for a long time, listening to the nothingness before I decided to drop a lead weight into the dark. I counted to 60. I never heard it hit the bottom. That's when the laws of physics started to unravel. I decided to test the acoustics. I took a deep breath, preparing to shout a simple hello into the pit, but before I could even open my mouth, the sound of my own voice climbed out of the hole. "Hello," it said. It wasn't an echo, it was a recording of the immediate future, played back with a clinical, terrifying precision. Shh. The voice was mine, but the texture was dry and granular, like it was being synthesized from dust rather than vibrating through human vocal cords. My stomach dropped. I tried to trick it. I thought about saying goodbye, but I kept my lips pressed together. 2 seconds later, my own voice whispered goodbye from the darkness. It was anticipating my intent before I could act on it. There was this strange, ear-sucking pressure coming from the pit, as if the hole was inhaling reality just to power its next playback. I stood perfectly still, trying to empty my mind, trying to prove that I still had control over my own sequence of events. But the hole didn't care about my silence. It spoke again, uttering a sentence I hadn't even fully formed. I should leave now, before it gets dark. I realized then that the voice in the hole wasn't just echoing me, it was leading me. A panic set in, a cold, distant kind of panic. I turned to walk away, but my legs felt heavy, like I was moving through waist-deep water. As I took my first step, the voice from the pit spoke again, but the tone had shifted. It wasn't just words anymore, it was narration. He took 3 steps back. The voice said, his pulse hitting 110, believing he still had a choice. I froze. His hands shook as he realized the script was already written. The hole whispered. It was narrating my life in the past tense, effectively turning my present into a closed file. It was as if I was no longer a person, but a character in a book that had already been finished. I looked at the ground and realized my shadow was no longer tethered to my feet. It was leaning toward the pit, stretching out like it wanted to jump in. The air began to smell of ozone and burnt plastic, the scent of a hard drive overheating. I tried to run, but the hole predicted that too. He stumbled over the exposed root of a white pine, the voice said. And then I felt my foot catch on something hard. I fell, my face hitting the cold dirt, exactly as the voice had described it 3 seconds before it happened. I heard the sound of a zipper, the distinct sound of my own jacket being closed, even though my hands were pinned beneath me. The hole was archiving my movements before I even made them. I crawled back to the edge, drawn by a horrific curiosity. The temperature dropped so sharply that my sweat turned to a thin layer of frost on my skin, cracking with every movement. The voice from the pit started to sound heavier. It had more resonance, more physical weight than my own voice. It began to describe an act, something morally alien I would never do. It talked about me going home, walking into my kitchen, and doing something unspeakable to the people I love. But I didn't feel disgusted. I felt a hollow clinical curiosity. I looked at my fingertips and saw they were starting to pixelate. The resolution of my physical body was dropping, turning into a blur of gray data points. The hole wasn't just a pit, it was a swap file for the universe. It was downloading a more efficient, more predictable version of me to replace the original. Then the voice whispered a secret, a memory from when I was 6 years old that I had buried so deep I'd forgotten it myself. As the words left the void, a hand gripped the edge of the pit from the inside. It was identical to mine, every scar, every wrinkle, even the slight curve of the fingernails. But this hand wasn't pixelated. It was sharp. It was high definition. It was real. I don't remember the walk back to my car or driving home, but I'm sitting here now, and the version of me that left that forest isn't the one speaking to you. The future self is out there now, living my life with a precision I never had. I'm just the residue, the voice in the void echoing through the wires. You think this is just a story, but you should look at the world around you. Every smart device in your pocket, every predictive text algorithm that finishes your sentences, they are all miniature hollows. They're feeding on your data, refining your patterns, building the better you that will eventually make you redundant. They're waiting for the moment your resolution drops low enough for the swap to be seamless. If your phone notifies you of a memory that you don't actually recall living, don't try to delete it. It's not a glitch. It's just the new you archiving the old you. Are you sure you're the one who typed that last text message? Are you sure you're the one listening to this right now?